Ugh. Hey everyone, welcome back to Kisty Reads. Now today I wanted to do a book haul. I have hauled so many books during this quarantine. It is insanity. I love physical books and I don't always get a chance to read them when I'm doing my normal life, like when I'm commuting, when I'm at work. Now with the quarantine, I thought to myself, it's a great time to read physical books, which are my favorite form of books. And so I went on a not quite so small shopping spree and I bought a lot of books. And this is going to be part one. So my first purchase was quite a big one, and it is this box set of the Throne of Glass series. It is the white box set and it is absolutely stunning. There is a sword on the front, and on the back there is a quote, I assume from the books. I haven't actually read these. I'm starting to read these this month for the Owls. I'm really excited, but I just wanted to show this beautiful box set because it is stunning and I prefer these white covers to the original cover, so I'm pretty excited to have this one. The next book that I bought was The Harm Tree by Rose Edwards. Now this is a story about two girls that grow up together in a world that had been previously torn by war, and they grew up together because their family sent them to work together, but as it turns out they're used as tools for the apparently ongoing war in their world. Now I'm really excited for this one. I actually discovered this book from another booktuber that had hauled this and it sounded really interesting, so I checked it out on Goodreads and lo and behold I ended up buying it. It is a beautiful book and I'm really intrigued by the story. I haven't heard too much about this from any other booktubers besides that one, and I haven't actually heard too much about this in the fantasy world at all, so I'm pretty stoked to read it. The next book is also one that I haven't really heard a lot about. It is called The Library of the Unwritten, and it is the first book of a series of books in this world or realm, and I've been really intrigued ever since I saw the cover when it popped up on my Amazon account actually. So this is about a librarian who works in a wing of the library in hell called the Unwritten Wing, where stories that haven't been finished go and are stored. And basically she keeps an eye on these stories and the restless characters that might want to jump out. The synopsis goes on to tell us that one of the characters does jump out and she has to go and find them before they hurt the author. So I'm really intrigued. I love books about books and about libraries, so I think this one might be really interesting, and if it is, I'll be buying the next book in the series. This next book I actually heard about from Books with Lala. Now I've been wanting to expand my taste in books and even my taste in the fantasy genre, and she has been raving about this one book called Middlegame by Shannon McGuire. Now I know that Shannon McGuire is a popular author among booktubers, but I haven't personally read any of her works, so I'm really excited to take a look at this one. It's supposed to be really good and I'm intrigued. It's supposed to be kind of weird and I don't know much about it. I haven't read more than a couple lines of the synopsis, and honestly before I read a book I kind of like to know as little as possible so I can really kind of get into the story with an unbiased point of view. So I'm kind of intrigued by this one. The next book is another YA fantasy novel. It's an oldie but apparently a goodie. I found this one just from looking at the pics of other YA fantasy lovers, and it is called The Bone Witch. I know this is the first of a trilogy. It is about a witch who is a bone witch, which I think in this world is necromancy, and she goes on to fulfill her kind of bone witch destiny and gets tutored by someone who is wise in the ways of bone witchery. So I think it's going to be kind of an interesting fantasy adventure novel is what I pick up from it. I really enjoy the kind of bone witchy types of novels. I love that kind of mystical spiritual type of witchiness that has more to do with just kind of basic elemental magic and more into the spiritual kind of magic. So I'm really intrigued about this book and I'm hoping that I like it because I definitely want to dig into the rest of the series. It has some pretty decent reviews on Goodreads, so I'm definitely expecting good things from this one. The next book is also another YA fantasy novel, and this one I think has come out recently, and it is called The Bone Criers Moon by Catherine Purdy. I originally heard about this one because it was in one of the bookish boxes that comes out every every month. I can't remember which one exactly it was, but on Bookstagram someone was describing the plot of this book and I thought it was so interesting. It's kind of got this star-crossed lovers plot where the girl in the novel is a bone crier and she has to fulfill her destiny by killing her one true love, and her one true love ends up being someone whose father was killed by another bone crier. He is seeking revenge on the bone criers for killing his father, and then somehow I think they fall in love, and it's one of those kinds of tropes which I do really enjoy. So I'm hoping that this one lives up to that really kind of fun, romantic, dark, magic expectation, and I've heard a lot of good things. It's been really hyped up on Bookstagram, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what this one's about. The next book is more of an adult book that deals with magical realism. I discovered this one through other fiction lovers. It didn't really pop up anywhere on Booktuber or Bookstagram as far as my Booktuber Bookstagram was concerned, but it sounded really interesting when I saw an arc of it, so I decided to buy a finished copy, and it is called Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe by Heather Weber. This one has more of a magical realism theme to it. It's about this girl who goes to what I think is her hometown to her grandmother's funeral, and there she kind of ends up being really intrigued by the town where her father grew up in, or at least her father's family is in, and that apparently her mother ran away from. It has this kind of like small town mysterious air that I think will be really interesting to read. Again, I want to expand my genre reading, and I know that going from fantasy to just a broader realm of fiction isn't really a great expansion, but I figured I would start little steps in all directions. So the next book is actually kind of a step away from the fantasy genre, and it is An Anonymous Girl. This is a New York Times bestseller apparently, and I actually found this when I was browsing the Barnes & Noble website. I've been wanting to get more into thrillers, and I've gotten a couple other thriller novels, but they haven't come in yet, so this one finally did. It is a psychological thriller. So our main character, Jessica, signs up for a psychology study where her behavior is supposed to just be monitored, but apparently it ends up being manipulated, and that is, I think, most premise of the book is how she gets into that and hopefully how she gets out of it. I don't know much about this book. I haven't read any of the reviews. It just sounded really interesting. It was a bestseller, so it has a lot of promise, right? And I think it'll be really interesting to get into a psychological thriller. Some of the kind of movies that I really like end up being psychological thrillers, so I'm hoping to find the same enjoyment from a psychological thriller in a book. So the next book is definitely a step out of the genre that I like to read in, but if you watched my newbie tag video, you'll know that I like to read books that kind of teach me about the world, teach me about different perspectives, and teach me about subjects that I normally might not read a lot about in the fantasy books that I currently read, and that is why I'm no longer talking to white people about race, and you can't see the words white people, but they're on the cover embossed, by Rennie Edo-Lodge. So I actually discovered this book, I think, via Bookstagram, where someone was actually talking about how racism is portrayed in society. Now, obviously, I've learned about racism in school and the history and such things, but I don't think I've ever gotten as in-depth as I think this book goes. It talks about white privilege, it talks about feminism and racism, and it talks about race and the division of class and how race plays a role in that, which are subjects that I personally don't know that much about and I'm intrigued by. So I thought it was a good book to expand my knowledge, and I heard that this is something that pretty much everyone should read. So I'm going to be digging into this one soon. The last two books are also in the realm of learning, which is one of my favorite things to do, and they are by Malcolm Gladwell. So first we have The Outliers, which I think everybody knows, and then we have Talking to Strangers, which I believe is his newest release so far. And I don't wholly know what this book is really going to go into. It says that it's going to talk about how we interact with strangers and how we can get to know the people that we don't know better. And I'm not 100% sure exactly what that's going to mean, but his past works have always been super intriguing and very informative. So I'm looking forward to delving into this one and seeing what it has to offer. And of course, Outliers, which most of us probably have heard of or have looked at least once or twice in our lives, because it is such a popular book. It is literally everywhere. Every airport, every Barnes & Noble, every newsstand, I've always seen this book, and it talks about the outliers like Bill Gates and the Beatles and how they were brought up, what surrounds their life and their culture, and things like that. And I'm really curious to see who's going to be in this book. Maybe some of the people that I look up to might be in here, and I'll get to see what their lives and their natural surroundings were like as they were brought up and as they became an outlier in society. So these are all the books for part 1 of the book haul. haul. Stay tuned for part 2, which I will be posting the week after this one. If you like this video, please check out my other videos. I'll link some down below, and please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button because that really helps support my channel. Thank you!